Now, if there is one thing that separates a professional looking van build from a standard DIY build, it's how to handle the curves. Straight walls are easy. Vans don't have straight walls. Today we are going to be tackling the absolute hardest part of the installation phase, the top bloody angles on the opposite side, and the absolute nightmare of a compound curves. Now, if there is one thing that separates a professional looking van build from a standard DIY build, it's how to handle the curves. Straight walls are easy, but vans don't have straight walls. So today we are going to be tackling the absolute hardest part of the installation phase, the top angles on the other side, and the absolute nightmare of a compound curves above the sliding door. If you get these top angles wrong today, your timber cladding is going to look terrible next week. It's that simple. You'll have humps and bumps and gaps you just can't hide. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to insulate these awkward tight spaces using 50mm Celotex. Now I'm going to show you how to shape rigid board to a curved roof and how to use grip fill extra grip the right way, and the carpenter's mindset you need to have to guarantee your cladding goes on flawlessly. It isn't just about throwing insulation into the cavity. This is about thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead. So let's get the tools out and let's get to work. Alright, so we are starting on the opposite side of the van, right up at the top of the wall meets the ceiling. The whole section follows the natural curvature of the van. The ultimate end goal here is that when we eventually put the timber battens on, attach the cladding, it creates this beautiful sweeping curve rather than a harsh boxy corner. Now I'm starting with 50mm Celotex board. Now a lot of people struggle to cut this stuff cleanly, but I've just laid it down flat right here on top of this metal floor of the van, grabbed my circular saw, and I'm just cutting them down to size roughly. Pro tip for you: when you're using a circular saw on PRR board like Celotex, it does go through it like butter and it kicks up a lot of bloody dust. Always make sure your blade is set just a fraction deeper than the 50mm thickness of the board, just so you ain't fighting that friction, and keep a steady continuous pace. So once I have my rough strips, it's time to prepare the adhesive. Now I am using on this job the grip fill extra grip to stick all these boards directly to the metalwork. But before we start pumping this stuff out, you need to prep the nozzle. So take a sharp Stanley blade, cut the nozzle off at about 45° angle. Here is a little key fact for you: cutting the nozzle at an angle isn't just for looks. It allows you to drag the tip flat along the Celotex board, which then forces the adhesive to flatten out and grab onto the foil face of the board, giving you a significantly stronger bond to the metal than if you just laid down a round bead. It prevents air pockets. Now we get on to the tedious part. Now there is still a lot of measuring and cutting again. Because Celotex is completely rigid, it doesn't want to bend to the curve of the van. You have to force the shape by cutting it precisely. Now I had to put a nice little bevel on the back of one of my main boards by taking a sharp blade and just taking off the harsh back corner at an angle, and then it just suddenly slotted into the curve of the van perfectly. It sat nice and flush on the metalwork. And this brings me to a really important point about this van build. When you are doing a job like this, you cannot just think about the piece of insulation in your hand. You need to think 1, 2, 3 or even 4 steps ahead. In this particular moment, as I'm pushing this Celotex into place, my brain is already visualising the cladding. I'm thinking to myself, how is the cladding going to go on? How far out do I need to bring my timbers? Will this piece of Celotex push the batten out too far and ruin the curve? Now everything we are doing right now with this insulation, it dictates the final finish of the woodwork. If your insulation is bulging past the metal ribs of your van or your timber battens, then your timber battens, they just simply won't sit flat. Now if your battens don't sit flat, your cladding will be very wavy. Now make sure every single piece of board sits perfectly flush or slightly recessed from the metal framework. Now to get it absolutely perfect, I am using a pad saw to cut all the tiny little detail pieces. A pad saw is brilliant for this because blade is stiff and the teeth are aggressive. So it don't want to wander around while you're trying to cut a complex shape out of the foam. So getting these foundations right is exactly what makes or breaks a build. It can be overwhelming trying to figure out what order to do things in, what materials to use, and how to avoid the expensive mistakes that set you back weeks. Now, because of that, I've been working on something huge behind the scenes. I am putting together a complete step-by-step PDF van build blueprint for this build. It's going to cover everything from the empty metal shell all the way to the final coat of oil on the worktop, laying out the exact order of operations so you don't have to guess. Now, it is not live yet, but if you want to be the very first to know when it drops and get a massive head start on your own build, then head down to the description right now, click the link, join the email list, and I'll be sending out exclusive updates there. And the people that are on the list will be the first ones to get their hands on this blueprint the second it is ready. Alright, back to the grind. So once the top opposite side was done and looking beautifully flush, we had to face the sliding door. Insulating over the sliding door is notoriously tricky. The metalwork here doesn't just curve in one direction, it curves in multiple different angles at the same time to accommodate the door track and the structural integrity of the roof. It's a compound curve. So the first thing I had to do was grab a blade and cut away all the excess of expanding foam that had cured, expanding out the cavities from the previous day. You want a nice, flat, clean working surface. A quick tip for you on expanding foam. It is an incredible tool for van builds because it acts as both a high R value insulator and an air seal. When you inject it into the metal ribs, it prevents warm, moist air inside the van from ever reaching the metal cold shell, which will stop condensation dead in its tracks. But it does expand with a lot of force. So always underfill your cavities, let it cure a little bit, and then trim it back flush with a sharp knife the next day. Easier said than done though. So I took my time above the sliding door. It was just a massive puzzle of small cuts, bevels, and constant test fitting. But we kept at it, and we managed to get it done, leaving a perfectly insulated void that perfectly matched the contours of the van. Then we came to the final hurdle. Right at the very end of this run, there was a tiny little triangle void left over. So I measured it up, I cut a triangle piece of Celotex, coated the back of it in some grit fill and slotted it straight in. And I made absolutely sure it sat perfectly straight and level with the rest of the run. So just before we wrap all this up, I want to leave you with a few key facts about insulating your van with rigid foam boards, because understanding the why makes the how much easier. So number one, Celotex is fantastic because it has one of the highest thermal resistances per inch of any insulation that you can buy. But its weakness is that it don't bend. If you try and force a straight board against a curved wall, it will eventually just pop off, no matter how much grit fill or expanding foam you use. This is why taking the time to bevel the back edges and cut into smaller segments around those tight curves is non-negotiable, my friend. So number two, the thermal bridging. When you're cutting all these little tiny pieces to fit around the sliding door, you are inevitably going to have a small gap between the boards, but don't just leave them. Any gap with air can touch the bare metal is a thermal bridge, and it will draw heat right out of your van in the winter. So once all the boards are grit filled in place, you must go back with your expanding foam and inject into every single tiny gap between the Celotex and the metal framework. Lock it all together into one seamless, airtight layer. And finally, patience. As you saw today, To get truly professional finish ready for the cladding, you will spend 80% of your time just measuring, test fitting, and 20% actually gluing things down. For me, I am incredibly happy with how this turned out. The curves is looking perfectly continuous, and the timber battens are going to sit beautifully on this. Now I want to know your thoughts. What has been the most frustrating part of your van build so far? Is it the insulation, or are you dreading the electrics? Let me know down in the comments. I'm going to reply as many as I can tonight. So if you got some value out of this video and picked up a few new tricks, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stage of the build. We're moving fast now. I'll see you guys on the next one.